Hit the restart button. We're right there to recharge those batteries. We're here to help you. Restart, recharge. Restart, recharge.
Aloha, I am Katie Ritter.
And I'm Justin Thomas, and this is the Restart Recharge podcast, a podcast for coaches by coaches. We bring you tips and tricks to help you in your everyday work as an instructional technology coach, or, whatever they call you in your school district.
And so hopefully you're going to leave this episode with us today feeling just a little bit less on your own coaching island as you listen.
And we have a really good episode today. It's the finale, if you will, of the trilogy that we've had here on planning good PD. And planning a good, authentic PD can be difficult. Adding the layers of differentiation, personal choice, assessment, and alignment with district initiatives makes this coaching skill even tougher to master. This episode is going to divulge into our top secrets for making a PD that sticks all year long, adding strategic themes, activities, and creating an environment of engagement and fun can make a huge difference. So we were trying to get it for a third time, and I think we successfully did. Back for another round. It's the third and final episode of our PD mini-series. We have Brooke Conklin returning once again. If you follow the podcast on social media, you might have also seen Brooke on a few takeovers earlier this summer. Beyond living out her dreams as an amateur social media influencer, Brooke is gearing up for another great school year and power-packed PD kicking off this week. This year, she will be returning to serve as a technology coach for a pre-K to 12th grade teachers in a Southwest Ohio school district. So welcome back, Brooke.
Thanks, Justin. It is great to be back on this third PD mini-series episode.
Good to have you.
All right, and I have the pleasure of reintroducing you again, listeners, to Lisa Kuhn. You first met Lisa back in episode 2 when we talked about remote, face-to-face, and hybrid coaching. She was wearing her French teacher beret, and now that she is busy seizing the summer, which was a throwback to another appearance she made, episode 7, she can be found wearing her whitewater rafting helmet, or when she is working in the office, her back-to-school PD prepping cap. So welcome back once again, Lisa.
Thank you very much, Katie. It's good to be back.
Yes, and we do not have a live studio audience with us today, but we did get new podcasting recording equipment here. So nothing fancy. I don't even know what this is called, but
a Zoom.
Yeah, Justin and Tyler on the team assure us that this thing is going to be just what we need to improve the sound. So thanks for bearing with us over the past few episodes as we kind of figured out the best way to do this, and we are now super excited to have lots of we're going to try not to go too crazy on some of the sound effects here, but we just can't help it for the first recording. So you might get a few applause.
No promises.
No promises, but we're having fun. All right, ladies. So our final in the 3 of the PD series here, really digging into making PD stick. So let's first kind of situate ourselves as we remember our own PD that we had to attend, either, whether it was when you were a teacher or as a coach now. So thinking back to your own professional development, what stood out to you? And it can either be for the good or for the not so good.
Well, I'll go ahead and start. The best PD that I ever had was in my first year of teaching. Our principal told us to find a school where they would let us in and watch someone teaching the same content we did. So I went to a Dayton area school and spent the day following the French and German teachers. And that was so very pertinent to what I was doing at the time that it was the best thing ever. I didn't have to sit and listen to someone talk about. I got to watch it in action. So it was phenomenal.
I love that.
Yeah, it was great.
I'm going to go far opposite from Lisa. I have scars from this PD. So my former school district was very big on choice PD. At least once a year they had a full day where you could choose which sessions you wanted to go to. And I made the mistake of just picking the ones that sounded relevant to me, whereas everyone else that I worked with compared notes and told each other which presenters were enjoyable and which presentations you should go to and which ones you should steer away from. So me and a few other sorry souls ended up in this social studies PD where I don't even remember what the name of it was or what the goal was, because I don't think there was a goal.
Very memorable.
Very memorable. But what I do remember is the first 10 minutes, this guy spent the whole first 10 minutes moving around the room and hanging up posters of the Ohio Social Studies standards. So each grade level around the room, K through 12, a poster of the standards. Then we spent the next, kid you not, 45 minutes touring the standards in silence. We walked around the room, starting at kindergarten. We were tasked with just looking at the standards, and I don't even know what we were supposed to be doing. We just walked around in silence and looked at these posters. And then I think that there was maybe 5 minutes at the end where we talked about what our takeaways were. I don't remember anybody's takeaways because I don't know that there were any. But I had no takeaways. It was silent. It didn't seem relevant. And like I said, I don't really know what the goal of that was. So
Wow,
that was the
sounds
worst
like a
PD.
museum visit.
Yeah.
And not a very good one.
On your way to death. It was slow and painful.
Oh, yikes. That is painful. I'm sorry about that, Brooke.
Our condolences for all these years.
Oh, and I just feel bad for whoever I was leading that session a little bit. Did they get any training? Did anyone guide them on what to do? Or did they just get kind of tossed in to lead this and they were sort of floundering to figure it out?
Right.
Who
Yeah.
knows?
Well, let's talk about some of the PD sessions that you've given. Hopefully they've been a little bit more on the Lisa side as opposed to Brooke's case. But
I'm just glad Brooke didn't describe me when she talked about
No, you were on the A list. People went to your session. Yeah.
Thinking back to PD sessions that you've given, what stands out to you as being the most engaging or making the biggest difference, and how did you achieve that? So professional development that you have put on that was hopefully very memorable in a good way.
I'll let you start so you can have a positive moment.
Cool. Thanks, Lisa.
We'll bring you out of the depths of despair.
I have to say, I'm so glad that Lisa is on this episode with me because I've never been in a session with Lisa that wasn't fun. She just does the best PD and just brings the joy to everything.
Oh, thank you.
So thanks for being my counter. I think my most proud PD session that I've ever designed or that was the most engaging or made the biggest difference was my session on Hacker Academy. So this session actually arose out of a problem at school. There were some very clever 8th grade students that figured out, I don't even know how they did it, but they somehow figured out the code of one of their literacy programs. They were supposed to be reading for so many minutes out of the day, and they figured out how to jump the system and just input their time manually. And then they also figured out how to see what the correct answers were on the quiz from the computer code, which had these 8th grade language arts teachers furious. So naturally, the reaction from teachers is to ask the IT department to just block whatever the program was that they were using. I think it was some kind of bot thing. So I stepped in and realizing that students are forever going to be one step ahead of us when it comes to figuring out shortcuts around the system, and designed this Hacker Academy. So what we did, I had teachers come in and without any instruction or any lecture, there's just that triangle peg game. If you've ever been to Cracker Barrel, you use the little golf tees and you jump over one another. So I gave them maybe 5 or 10 minutes and had them just play the game. Naturally, some people looked it up on their phone. They went straight to YouTube. Other people just watched their neighbor do it, and then they replicated that. So then the next task that they had to do was to create their own peg game using whatever resources they had. So they created their own game objective. They created their own rules, and they got really, really into it. And so then we use that kind of as an anchor to talk about the learning that's happening in the classroom. And when you're just kind of replicating a task or answering multiple choice questions, your level of cognition is pretty low. So students are really motivated to find a shortcut or a way around that. But when you switch up your instruction and you make it project-based or challenging, or you engage kids in critical thinking, creativity, they're more motivated to engage in the task than they are to shortcut it. So it's just a really cool session, and I think that it was so cool because it was fun. It was experience-based. We were doing hands-on creative things. It was relevant, so it was addressing a problem that they had in their classroom, and it also was achievable. So if I sat down with those same teachers and taught them about bots and coding and all of these kind of abstract things to help them understand what their kids were doing, that's not really like an achievable thing for most teachers to understand.
Right.
So it would have just become frustrating. So instead, I like to say like achievable stretches. I challenged them in a way that they could really replicate in their classroom to help out with their problem. So that was my most fun one.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of my most memorable ones also has to do with that filling a need. Mine wasn't necessarily a problem, but when teachers have a need that needs to be filled, I think it really makes a difference. And in my case, it's the ViewSonic view boards. So my PK through 3 teachers learned that next year they're going to have ViewSonic view boards instead of projectors and screens. And so everybody wanted and needed to learn it. And they were excited to learn about it here in the springtime because they're also moving to new buildings. So this was a way to get them engaged and take one thing off their plate in the fall. Yeah. It also allowed for some growth in the PD. And what I mean by that was I held several different sessions because there were different buildings, different grade levels. And the very first one that I held was probably the most humorous of them all because the tech director wanted to try to record the session. So that was one piece, right? Then we had to set up the view board for the first time. And I had been practicing for weeks in another building with another view board, worked flawlessly. Show up at the PD, open your VCast sender, enter the code. Everyone in the room was entering the code. Nobody was joining the screen.
That's how it always is. Yeah.
Not a single person. So for 10 minutes, the tech director is playing with my computer trying to figure out what's wrong. Mm-hmm. He's looking at the view board settings. And finally, one of the teachers goes, "I got it." We're like, "What?" It's a 0, not an O. Yes. So we were all typing this code in and had the wrong digit. And each session that we had presented some type of logical possible problem that we could run across. And so we created this conversation that followed through during the month of May. You know, if you've already had PD, be aware of this, or those of you who are getting ready for PD, be aware of that. And then the other piece was they actually got to put the ViewSonic view boards in their classroom for at least a couple of days to truly implement it and use it in their classroom, as opposed to it being a one-off, hey, here's how it's used, have a nice summer, we'll see you in August. So it just all went together really nicely and just fell into place, like could not have been planned otherwise. Like it just hit.
I love that.
Yeah, that was really nice.
Shout out to the teacher that thought, you know what, maybe that's not what everyone else apparently thinks it is. And,
oh, man.
put that through.
Seriously.
Talk about being pigeonholed.
Right?
And what a good way to end the year, too. You know, something practical that they're able to apply and use and get them looking forward to next year. So that's good. So, okay, so in our last episode, part 2 of this little 3-part series, we talked a lot about differentiation, Brooke, with you and Tracee, and how to execute that in your professional development. So we're really walking the walk, not just talking the talk with our teachers. And so when you both, some things that you have described, like Lisa, your perfect PD was really about, like you were very engaged in that because you were able to just walk around with the teachers that you were shadowing and
Right.
in the view boards, the teachers were engaged because, they needed it and they were getting to do it and actually
Right.
then use it the next day. And Brooke, it was all hands on deck with your Hacker Academy and your sort of abysmal example. Like there was no engagement. You described it like individually, just walking around silently. And so while engagement might not necessarily always translate to like something that sticks and gets used, it's definitely, I would argue maybe especially in PD, it's not going to stick if they're not actually engaged because it's too easy as adults with everything else on your plate to just check your email or take care of the grading instead of this thing that's not relevant to you. So I think engagement is also super key when we are planning really high quality professional development experiences. So thinking about kind of how these two things are related and how they are different. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with PD and the relationship between and with differentiation and engagement in the PD?
Yeah, I have found that it really helps, even though Brooke didn't have such a good experience with breakout sessions. I found that breakout sessions work really well for that differentiation piece because then you can offer sessions for the high level performers and those just starting. You can differentiate based on content area because I know my intervention specialists and my non-core teachers, the math, the music. Yeah, sorry, math, you are a core subject. My music, the art, the gym, the world languages feel like some of those lessons and sessions are not pertinent to them. And so to have a breakout session where either someone from one of those departments is presenting or if I pick up and capture that one, they really appreciate that and feel more engaged just because it's focused on them. And it's not just the nice tidy box with the ribbon, covering it. It's pertinent to them. And then they've also been able to differentiate by skill levels. So one of the changes I'm making to this fall's PD is each building or grade levels that have their PD, we're having a session for new to the building or district. And so that way we can have some of the proficient teachers, those they got it teachers, lead some sessions showing the newbies what to expect. And I got a lot of positive feedback this year as I started weaving that concept in with the breakout sessions. They love feeling that, oh, this is about me and not about some subject that I have no idea what it is, right?
Picked up the visual there.
Yeah. You're welcome. It was audio, but I'll give it to you.
That wasn't even a sound effect button.
There you go. Lisa, I love how you pointed out within differentiation that includes application needs, like your content area, how they're going to apply that. Differentiation includes readiness, skill level,
Absolutely.
and then just speed of mastery. I think a lot of times when we talk about differentiation, and this is kind of going back to last episode, but we tend to only think of skill level, but application need is equally important to consider. So for me, I think that when we talk about the relationship between differentiation and engagement, differentiation makes learning outcomes accessible. So whatever your goal is, differentiating is what makes it accessible to all learners in the classroom. That's skill level, application need, speed of mastery.
Absolutely.
So like when you have a goal in mind, say you're wanting to help teachers personalize learning with hyperdocs. Engagement is paramount for reaching that outcome because educators get disengaged if they feel like the content is like too far ahead of them, like it's too advanced for them. They tune out, they check their email, they distract the person next to them, or if they feel like they've already got it, if what you're telling them is something they don't already know. Equally, as Lisa said, a lot of times if they don't see a clear connection to their grade level, so you're doing hyperdocs for teachers that are like early childhood teachers, and the connection isn't clear for how early childhood learners can use hyperdocs, those teachers are going to tune out. So they really have to see the clear connection. And they have to understand how to do that thing. So that thing has to be at their level. So if we differentiate and meet educators where they are, and clearly connect our content to their needs. Like Lisa said, our non-core teachers, math, foreign language, band, language arts, you name it, we have a much better shot at keeping them engaged.
Absolutely. And it's really important to get the admin on board with that concept, because so often a school district will have a mission or a project that they have in mind that they want the whole district to use. But it doesn't always translate into, well, how's the high school going to use it versus the younger, the PK2s, or how is math going to use it compared to band? And that conversation needs to be ongoing as well.
Yeah, and I would argue as you're designing your PD, those connections need to be made clear right away.
Yes.
So don't wait till the
Absolutely.
end of your presentation, the end of your session to tell elementary teachers how they can also use the LMS.
Right.
Because at that point they've been
Wow.
disengaged for the last 45 minutes.
Right.
Very
Right at the
true.
end. Yeah, right at the end. Like,
Yeah.
oh, well, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so obviously a big thing for getting people excited about PDs. Maybe you need to have a little bit of building some hype, right? Build that anticipation. So think about, how do you market your PD? How do you build that hype for your professional development sessions? And when we come back from our sponsor break, we'll listen to what you have to say on that. Looking for a program that reaches all teachers in learning new tools to integrate in their lessons? Edu Badges is the answer. Edu is an anytime, anywhere badging program that is designed to take bite-sized tools for instruction and teach teachers how to use them. Edu has received the ISTE Seal of Alignment for educator standards, and each badge in our expanding library is aligned to the ISTE standards and the SAMR model. Learn more about the program that teachers call addicting at forward-edge.net/Edu Badges. Welcome back to the Restart Recharge podcast. Justin Thomas, Katie Ritter, Brooke Conklin, and Lisa Kuhn all involved here for a finale of this PD that sticks. And I talked a little bit before our sponsor break on how do you build that anticipation. You get people pumped up, ready to go to your PD when it comes. Because most of the time, let's be honest, as former teachers, there's a PD session. You're like, oh, that sounds good. But at the same time, you're like, there's a lot of other things I have going on. So how do you get your teachers to be all pumped up, jazzed, ready to go, and excited for your PD?
Yeah. So I'll kick us off here.
Yeah, please do.
I think Lisa and I have both mentioned it, but just responding to current problems of practice. So teachers are interested in whatever wheel is squeaking the loudest at the time, whether that's those new view boards that are coming in that they don't know anything about, or it's their 8th grade students that are outsmarting their way around their homework assignment. Teachers care about those squeaky wheels. So responding to those, if you can, in your PD sessions, and helping them develop their instruction and teach best practice is always helpful. So such things could, like Hacker Academy, or digital notebooks your kids can't lose. So you can find your way in those problems of practice. I would also say teaser commercials or invitations. So that could be as simple as making just like a 2-minute Loom video of your face on a good hair day. Just telling teachers what your session's going to be about and inviting them personally. Or making a little iMovie, something over dramatic is always pretty fun too. One of my other favorite, I have a whole list here. I'll just fire them at you.
Just keep going. Can I hit the applause button?
Yes.
I agree. Yes, I agree.
Catchy titles can be another fun way to hype up your session. So if you read auto grading with Google Forms, doesn't sound near as exciting as 99 problems but grades ain't one. So anytime you can make your title a little more fun or catchy, especially if you're presenting at a choice PD where you're, I'll say, competing with other presenters for attendees.
Brooke, do you want to share your Twitter handle or something for those not as clever as coming
Right.
Yes, I'll have to make sure that doing like a side hustle of PD
Yes.
title development isn't against my non-compete. But yeah, that could be another. Some people have Pampered Chef. I
Yeah.
create titles for
You
PD.
create titles, yeah. Was your last title, did you create that on the spot?
This one?
Yeah.
No, I wrote it down. I thought about it.
I was going to say, that just came straight from
I mean,
Impressive.
it's a good go-to. 99 problems, insert whatever the other one isn't.
Yeah.
And I never
Anyone's
thought
looking
of
for a
that, so.
recipe. I would also say personally inviting educators. So if you have a chance the week of your PD, make rounds and pop into people's rooms and say, hey, I'm doing this session on Friday. I'd really love to see you there, or, whatever your tagline is. But a personal invitation and a face to the session is always nice.
Food is always good too, I found.
Absolutely.
Yes. Now, I was fortunate to host a PD on May the 4th. So we did a May the 4th Be With You theme. It also happened to be Teacher Appreciation Day the same day. And it was a small group that I ended up having. And we did, Star Wars themed everything and food and fun. And it really pulled them in. I have to agree, though, with the inviting people in. I think that makes a huge difference, whether it be inviting them to the PD itself and getting them hyped for it, or inviting the people who are going to co-present or present there. That personal invitation makes a big difference. And then kind of alluding to what we were mentioning before about, oh, you heard that so-and-so's presenting. I want to go see that presentation. It gets people more excited than, oh, we get to walk through the Standards Museum, right?
And Lisa, if I know that you have snacks at your PD, I'm going to be there every time.
Well, I can't break the budget, though.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Got to watch the budget. I know it's not every time. One of the things that I had done this year was with March Madness. I actually almost started singing Justin because we had a little promo video with Let's Get Ready to Rumble starting it off. Yep. And then it showed the little topics that we were going to present and talk about at the March Madness. And it was a month long where they could attend little power PDs before or after school. But then they also had like a tic-tac-tech that I believe you were one of the creators of that. Maybe not.
I think it was Emily and Molly.
Emily and Molly. Okay, so kudos, Emily and Molly, to the Tic Tac Tech, because that went over fantastically. It built in that differentiation and the engagement, and I can do it when I'm available. I don't just have to do it during that scheduled time, which really helped.
Have we talked about Tic Tac Tech on the podcast?
I think it's been mentioned. I don't know that we've really explained it. So you might want to give like a quick little commercial for what that means, Lisa.
Like, hype it up.
So Tic Tac Tech. No, Tic Tac Tech is a tic-tac-toe board basically, and each square is a different type of PD, mini PD. It can be on a tool, it can be on a strategy, it can be on, we called it the gripe jam, but it can be any kind of jam you want. It doesn't have to be griping. And teachers try to get tic-tac-toe in the activities that they do.
Yeah. So essentially a choice board, and they're trying
Yes.
to get fill it out with tic-tac-toe to then get some kind of really small incentive
Yes,
from you.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, I reached out for that one. I reached out to Book Creator, and they gave me 3 certificates to raffle off to the people who got their Tic Tac Tech. So maybe, reach out to some of those vendors that you work with or that you use their products and say, hey, I'm doing a PD that includes this in there. Do you have anything, even if it's stickers? I mean, shoot, I taught high school for years, and my seniors loved stickers on their tests and quizzes and everything. Teachers like them too. So, whatever you can get, they love it.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
Yeah.
Especially if you give them enough notice.
Exactly. And then this year with the Olympics, since we're going to have back-to-back Olympics now, I'm working on creating an Olympics-based theme that's going to take us from the beginning of the year to start with the back-to-school PD all the way through the school year, and working on a type of a badging system, a medals system that as they work through different pieces, they'll get us, the medal.
Yeah.
Bronze,
so
silver,
fun.
gold, whatever. Yeah.
You're so far ahead of me.
It's a thought.
I was like, when are the Olympics?
Yeah,
Did I miss it?
It's just a thought. I
Yeah,
haven't.
I love
haven't-
that.
Thank you. Yeah.
I do. I like it. And a couple of things while we're talking about like the cute theme, and I think you guys have done a nice job, but Brooke, I think you always give some really good advice to people. Like sometimes it makes sense to start with a theme. Like obviously the Olympics,
Right.
right? Like you're going to go with that. And it's very easy to tie in to some things. But I think sometimes people can get kind of caught up in a theme where it sort of like distracts from what
Right.
you're doing. So just a little word of caution to coaches. Themes are really great and fun, and they pull people in and they make it more, relatable sometimes, and they just make it fun. But don't get so far off or just focus on your theme and try to fit a square peg in a round hole if it doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
Just kind of a little side note, word of caution. And then the other thing that I wanted to kind of a little word of advice to coaches listening. You both have mentioned in multiple different ways the relevancy that is so important to our adult learners so that they can go back and immediately apply it. And I think when we are providing that type of PD that they can go back and immediately do, not something that they need that they won't need for another few months because by then they've forgot it. And in some ways, great because they're scheduling another appointment with you. But the goal is to really teach them to fish, not constantly have to do the fishing for them. And when they can go back and immediately do that, that's great. And so with that, I think a lot of times when we are creating these year-long PD plans, a lot of times they want to know what's coming, they want to see what's coming, but like a little word of caution that I'll give our coaches sometimes is allow for a couple of open slots so that when you get there, we can anticipate a lot of their needs, but not scheduling every single session or at least somehow allowing for some of that flexibility so that, okay, this has actually come up a lot where, we're having these problems with the view boards, we need to address this, or hey, our teachers they thought they had this concept with personalized learning, but they're actually really struggling with this, let's revisit this, or we didn't even think about this. So allowing those open spots to plug in for those needs that come up throughout the year, I think is really important. And so that honestly kind of leads into that whole piece of that relevancy and allowing them to go back and sort of immediately implement it by creating these authentic experiences for our teachers. We talk about that a lot as coaches for our teachers, that if we really want to make the content relevant for students, it needs to be this authentic learning experience. So how are we as coaches through our professional development modeling that by providing those authentic learning experiences for our teachers?
So I would say I have just two quick ones, I think, for this question. But simply, I always think of the 4 C's as my guidepost for PD development. So creativity, communication, collaboration, critical thinking. If I'm doing all of those, or my educators are doing all of those in my session, they're engaging in really authentic learning. I think it's so common as a tech coach to fall into the trap of spending the whole 45 minutes or an hour in front walking teachers how to do something, insert whatever it is here. And I think about specifically math instruction, I would be lost if my teacher spent the whole hour up front showing me how to do something, and maybe I was following along on my own paper, maybe not, and they were never checking in with me. I was never getting time to independently practice or getting a new set of problems to try on my own, or being able to ask questions or communicate with people beside me. So I try to incorporate the 4 C's into whatever my session is. And then the other thing I like to do is just point out my methods and verbalize why I made the decisions that I did for that instructional activity. So that seems weird to narrate your behind the scenes thinking, but it's really helpful, I think, for educators. So if you put a timer on the board for the activity, point out visual timers are great for keeping student conversations on task because it might not be obvious why you chose to do that thing. So I would say narrating your instructional decisions is really helpful too.
Great tip.
Yeah, and then I've got 3 that I try to incorporate. One is if it is a tool that I can have them practice with to start, whether it be an ed puzzle, a Gumm kit, a hyperdoc. I create one that they go in and participate with as a student. And so they can see what the student is going through on the end side. And then we work our way back and learn about the tool and how to create it. Discussion time, I think, is very important. Again, probably more so for the non-gen ed content areas, because they often don't see how something is going to fit into their content areas. But even within the core group, I had an upper level high school English teacher, 2 of them, the juniors or seniors, that every year they do their analytical essay. And they're like, we want to do book creator, but we don't know how it's going to work. So we had the conversation, And they ended up doing a literary analysis in Book Creator. And they gave each, chapter or analysis that needed to be done so many pages and a table of contents. And it worked out beautifully because they had the discussion. They got to see how it could fit into what they were doing. And then the third thing, and it's critical, and often this is where we kind of all get bit in the butt, both as coaches and as teachers attending, right? Time to explore and create. That is where we feel like there's so much to do, to give, to introduce. Fitting that time in for the creation process is often a really hard one. And that's one that I'm constantly trying to rework because it's critical to getting them to make it stick, which is what this podcast is about. You got to make it stick somehow.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I mean, that kind of answers what our next question was on how do you create opportunities that ensure teachers are going to go back into the classroom and actually implement what they've learned in their PD sessions. I mean, you both did a really good job of explaining that. Is there anything that you would add to that that maybe you hadn't mentioned before?
Yeah, I would say whenever I give a PD session, there's kind of two groups of teachers I divide up in my brain. Teachers that are super excited about it, and then teachers that are like lukewarm or cold about whatever I'm talking about. So for my teachers that are really excited, and I notice in the session that they're really latching on to that content, I'll often ask, do you mind if I come visit? Whenever you do this, I'd love to see it in action, because then that creates a little level of accountability to make sure they follow up because they are so excited. And if they're not quite ready to implement it, it opens up the door to me coming in to co-plan for its implementation. And then for the teachers that are lukewarm to cold, they're kind of standoffish maybe in the PD, or I'm having trouble gauging their interest. I'll typically give them space after the PD, and then within the week or so, I might follow up in person and say, hey, I really enjoyed hanging out with you on Friday. Yeah. So super non-threatening, I enjoyed you as a human, and then I might ask them, what did you think of whatever the content is, or have you had a chance to try it out? So that normally opens up the door to a conversation about why they hated it or why they didn't think that it was relevant to them, so I can either clarify or offer to model it, teach it for a bell and try it out with their kids if they're not sure it's a good fit, or just provide them a more personal level of support.
Yeah, and along with that personal level of support, conversations need to happen on a continuous basis between the teachers and the coach. And sometimes the teachers, I think we're mind readers, because I went to a first grade PD about Ed Puzzle, and one of the teachers pipes up and she's like, you do know we're not using this because our kids can't read yet. I'm like, why, no, I didn't. You didn't tell me you weren't, using this tool. I was told you guys wanted this one. So conversations and reminding the teachers that it's an open door both ways. It's not just us coming into their classroom and, us going in and observing and giving them feedback. We need the feedback too, so we know what direction to head. And then I think along with all of these pieces that Brooke has mentioned and everything we've talked about is your passion in sharing the information. If you're not excited about what's going on, ain't nobody gonna be interested in, or they ain't gonna be happy. Yeah, it's not gonna be woo woo.
We gotta hype it up.
Yeah, if you think Google Sheets is boring, I'm for sure.
Yeah,
Google
exactly.
Sheets is boring.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I love that. So we have enjoyed ending with some top tips. So if you guys could, our last question here is to give us your top 2 tips for planning PD that sticks. If our listeners don't get anything else, these are your top 2 tips for PD that sticks.
Relevant and differentiated would be my 2.
Okay.
Yeah, make it relevant and differentiate it so you're hitting multiple groups.
Yeah, those are great. I feel like mine aren't as check the box friendly. I feel like I'm about to wear everyone's ears out. Those were so simple and concise and meaningful.
Yeah,
There was no character limit to these. Lisa, I feel like you're going back to when I was like, you have 10 seconds to answer this.
No.
From Coach Camp.
Those are great. If you're
No,
going to
I
put
like
a
it.
checklist
Yeah.
on your PD
Yeah.
plan,
They
that's
speak
great.
for themselves.
Yeah,
like-
they do.
Yeah.
1, 2. There you go.
All right. I'll challenge a listener out there to condense mine. I would say for my first one, to create your goal before you do anything else. So this is something that Katie alluded to a little bit earlier, but every single activity should support that goal. So before you start thinking about even your icebreaker, before you start thinking about your hands-on activity or your how you're going to set up the room for discussion, first start with your goal and make sure that every single thing you ask your educators to do goes back to that, because teachers are ultimate masters of instruction. Like, they literally instruct for a living, and they can detect bad instruction from a mile away, and a lot of teachers are unforgiving of that. So make sure that you have your ducks in a row and tie all of your activities back to your goal. The second thing I would recommend is to attach something memorable to each PD that you do. So I'll give kind of a situation or description here, example. So in the last 2 weeks, I've kind of been keeping tabs, but when I've been asked about PDs I've done in the past, these are the things that I've been asked. I've been asked about the PD that we made cabins in, the PD where we flipped the houses, and the PD with the tower competition. So each of those things that like people on my team remember, it wasn't the content necessarily, but it was like the memory that was made in that PD session. So if you can attach a memory, the content's gonna be a lot more retrievable, because the content of those PDs were the PD where we designed effective, authentic, and memorable instruction, the PD where we flipped our thinking about the use of ed tech in the classroom, the PD where we examined how to create classroom cultures of authentic collaboration. So make sure that your PD has something memorable, like a catchy title, a theme, a hands-on activity, a video, or a mantra, because I think, as Katie kind of said before, educator brains have so much stuff to juggle. They don't save space for your entire session, but they will save space for 99 problems, but grading ain't one. So if you can carve out that little memorable nugget, it will help anchor your content in educator brains.
Yeah. Yes, awesome. And I love that. And I wrote that down. I think, starting with the goal, I feel like share that goal too, right? Like, make that your first slide in the presentation. Like, here's what we're doing today. Let them know, so that they're not wandering around the room aimlessly, wondering what they're doing there and what they're supposed to get out of your session.
Well, and I think too, going back to something you alluded to earlier, Katie, is don't do something just because. Make sure that it makes sense. If humor fits, use it. If, creating a fancy schmancy built house, use it. But if not, use the building blocks you have. Everyone starts somewhere, and you can, grow it from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Brooke and Lisa, for coming on. Do you think we should give them a final round of applause?
Oh, please, one more sound effect.
One more sound effect. Do you want?
I want to press it. I want to press it.
Yes, it's been great having you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. The cool thing about this is if I keep holding it, it goes on endlessly.
I hadn't thought about that when I let her push the button there. But hopefully this has been a great, Brooke, you've been on all 3 of these from this series, and Lisa, you joined us here for the finale one. I hope that this little mini series has been very good for all of the coaches out there listening. And tune in next time, August 10th, we have Susanna Summers from Connect Hub coming on. She's going to talk to us about the importance of data collection as a tech coach. So next episode in 2 weeks, we'll have Susanna Summers.
Yes, really looking forward to having her to share with all of you. And so with that, thanks for tuning in for this 3-part series. We'll see you in 2 weeks. And in the meantime, be sure to subscribe to Restart Recharge wherever you listen to podcasts at restartrechargepodcast.com, and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at RR Coach Cast. And if you could be so kind to subscribe and review us, we would really appreciate it to help other tech coaches find our podcast.
Also, feel free to reach out to us on social media and let us know if there's any topics that you want to discuss, or just feel free to reach out and just interact with us too on social media. It doesn't necessarily have to have a topic you want to listen to. Just feel free to say hello.
Yeah, we're social people.
Yeah.
So with that, press the restart button.
Recharge your coaching batteries and leave feeling equipped and inspired to coach fearlessly with the Restart Recharge podcast,
a tech coach collective. Okay. Okay, are we ready? Oh, I start. Oh, wrong one! Damn it! That's why I'm not in charge of pressing the sound effect.
I mean, that one still worked. It still worked, you know?
We're gonna dance all